Phil is here with us to talk about the Ireland situation. Phil, we're getting a bit more detail. Look, some of the papers are seeing some things, some of the papers have some information, some of them have some connections that others don't, and who knows, right? But it looks like Robbie Brady is definitely somebody that's being spoken about as a potential starter in the midfield three, I presume, for this game. So, and it also looks like Seamus Coleman is less likely to start now than maybe we had thought in the first game, or maybe not. Who knows? Seamus Coleman might be the home fullback. What's your take on what you're seeing in this morning's papers about what's certain or uncertain at this point?
It certainly looks like Matt Doherty's going to get the nod at right back, and Stephen Kenny's going to go with 4, which would then consist of obviously Doherty, Duffy, Egan and Enda Stevens. The only way you can see the Doherty and Coleman both being in the same team is if you play 3 at the back, and it just doesn't look like it's going to happen, whether Stephen Kenny wanted to play a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2, but it looks like he wants to go either 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, which can obviously then change into a 4-5-1 when you're in a defensive shape. So that's maybe where Robbie Brady comes into it. I pretty much think that's the way the back 4 is going to look, and then there's a few places up for grabs. You know, we obviously know his fondness of Jason Malumbi, who had a great season on loan at Millwall. We don't know what his situation is. I know Graham Potter was on the football show last week and said they hadn't made a decision on what they're going to do with Jason Malumbi just yet, but he is a player that excites a lot of Irish fans. You know, somebody like Jeff Hendrick, obviously a former club mate of Robbie Brady. There's players like Jeff Hendrick, like Robbie Brady, who, you know, might have been criticised for their performances in recent years in the Ireland team, but these are the kind of players that in a more vibrant Irish team, more tactically astute team, hopefully, that they could actually, we could start to see the best of them again, because these were 2 players that looked like at Euro 2016 they were going to be the future of Irish football. Hendrick was brilliant.
We were so excited.
Yeah.
Kenny was on the show this week saying he was buzzing after we got beaten in that France game because the midfield in particular had played so well.
Yeah.
And it was a template for us to go forward. One of the things that does happen in all of these qualifying campaigns is that players end up playing who you don't expect to play because it's long. The process between here and getting to Qatar, say, is unbelievably long, and it's fraught with injury issues. Like, you know, you think back, David Myler's jersey's right beside you there. He played right back. He started right back for us in a qualifying game. Nobody would have suspected that was going to happen, but he stepped in and did a great job. So
against Germany as well.
Like, what Stephen Kenny needs is for all of these players to get an understanding of what he wants from them, so that when they're picked and when they're first choice or when they're out of form, they know exactly what's going to happen. Like, are we reading too much into the team selection? Damien Delaney was very like, I don't care what the team selection is. I just want to see the shape of the team.
No, I can understand that, what Damien Delaney is saying, the shape, because that's going to be different. And I'm just looking for more energy out of the team. I'm looking for, like, it's not quite put them under pressure. Obviously, things have evolved where you can press a team. So now is you wonder, say Shane Long is another player who obviously wasn't getting a look in for the last couple of years, and you know his confidence seemed to have taken a knock, especially in an Ireland jersey. But then, you know, you can see how he fits into Ralph Hasenhüttl's system, and then you think, yeah, he could do well in a Stephen Kenny team because he brings you high energy.
Yeah.
But you have to ask yourself, do you start somebody like Shane Long, or do you wait till the final half an hour when somebody else has done a lot of the hard work, and then Shane Long comes in when there's more space and he can expose defences? This is why it's so important. This is why football is no longer just about your starting 11. You have to have players that can make an impact off the bench. Obviously, we've seen it in leagues around Europe with the 5 substitutions. That just gives you even more options. But, you know, Aaron Connolly, I personally like to see him play on the left. So if you go 4-3-3, he plays on the left-hand side of that, and obviously he can come into central positions as well. If you've got Matt Doherty getting up and down the right, is that maybe somewhere that you can play a left-footed player on the right-hand side? I know you mentioned Robbie Brady as a midfielder, but maybe you could play him a bit more advanced. Callum O'Dowd is another player that fits that profile. So, I haven't even mentioned James McLean, who you know what you get from him when he plays in the green jersey.
Yeah, and so let me tell you what Nathan saw. 2 groups, right? One group was McCarthy, Hendrick, Horan as a midfield 3 behind O'Dowda, Long and McLean. So McLean obviously is a forward in that constellation. And then the other group was Arthur, Malumbi and Brady. So if Brady's starting, that's good news for Malumbi, and we know he loves Harry Arthur. And then it's Robinson, Ida and Connolly. Now, it's possible both these two teams start in separate games. Is that?
Yeah, that is a possibility. And basically, though, the way you've described those, or what Nathan obviously have seen those groups there, they are within the shape that you would imagine Stephen Kenny wants to play. So you can see all those roles lined up and exactly how, or the thinking behind what Stephen Kenny is trying to do. And there is a possibility, yeah, that he could completely change the team, but maybe stick with most of the back four. Obviously, we know if you're a defender, especially if you're centre half, you don't have to change it up as much. Maybe he might rotate his right defenders. Back. He could decide, I'll play Doherty for one game, I'll play Coleman for the other game. I think that's what we. Obviously, the headline is tomorrow when this team comes out.
Captain dropped.
All eyes are going to be on that. And this is something Stephen Kenny's going to learn. I'm sure he's well aware of it now, that anything he says, and this is something Joe talked about with Brian Kerr last night, about everything you say hits the back pages nowadays. So, you know, he's going to find that out. If he leaves Seamus Coleman out tomorrow, people are going to ask him after the game, you know, you dropped your captain. Or is Seamus still the captain? Who wears the armband?
It's John Egan was the assumption. Is that an automatic?
Yeah, well, Enda Stevens actually was asked about, Nathan asked him about it in the press briefing before, during the week, and he said about John Egan, and the exact words that came out of Enda Stevens, he's a born leader. John Egan is a born leader. He just commands that respect off his teammates, and he was pivotal in Sheffield United getting from the Championship to the Premier League. His first season as a Sheffield United player coincided with Sheffield United getting promoted, and yeah, he had a great season in the Premier League as well. So it's either him, maybe you're looking at Shane Duffy as well,
or James McCarthy. Sorry, go on, Will.
No, I was just going to say, Phil, when it comes to these selections, and if we do take it that this bibs against non-bibs is entirely kosher, and they're the two teams that Stephen Kenny's looking at the moment, do you reckon he goes with the more experienced team against Bulgaria and then uses the youthful players against Finland? Or what way do you think he's going to go? Do you think he goes straight in with Ida and with Malumbi and plays them against Bulgaria tomorrow night? Or is there sense in maybe holding back and starting them in the second game?
Yeah, I think if he was going to, if he had these two lineups the way we're talking about it now, it would seem like it would probably make more sense to hold off the inexperienced players for the second game. Because this is a big moment for Stephen Kenny as well. This is his first game as the senior manager, and I think we're all looking to see how the team performs, and we want to see what way they're going to play, and if they, you know, if there's more energy in the team. But ultimately, if they lose, then, you know, people are saying, okay, it was great to watch, but we didn't win. So Stephen Kenny wants to win, and he wants the performance as well.
Yeah, but aren't you better off picking the young lads for the first game? Because then it's like, oh, look, it was just the first game, you know, we're giving them the opportunity, keeping everybody on their toes. And if you lose with the young lads, no one's going to be going, you lost your first game. It's like, oh, wait, but look at the amazing, exciting team we have.
Yeah, like it's a balance in that, because if he starts the more experienced players and they win, then obviously makes things easier to bring in the young players for the second game. But yeah, if they lose, I know, then the pressure's on. Maybe he has to rethink it. But, you know, personally what I'd like to see him do is just pick what he feels is the strongest team and then look ahead to the next game after the final whistle goes tomorrow. Like, literally take one game at a time.
I mean, that's very cliched, Phil.
I know.
Come on, we want some long-term thinking here. We've got a new manager with like a bunch of very exciting young players. None of this one game at a time nonsense. Come on.
Yeah, but there has to be a bit. Say just.
So your team would actually be. Your team would be. I don't want to use the word conservative, but it would be relatively conservative.
No, I actually, the way those two lineups were described, I wouldn't pick either of them. It'd be a mix and a match of both. Like I would go with a 4-3-3, and I'd have Malumbi in there.
McCarthy.
I'd have McCarthy in there. I'd probably go with Hendrick, because I think with Hendrick, he's got a lot to prove, but I think he could be one that benefits from Stephen Kenny taking over, where it's almost like a clean slate. And
I get all that. I just think that I'd love to see the players who play particularly in the first game, anybody who's played any football would be top of my list, as opposed to somebody who hasn't kicked a ball in ages. Because, you know, I love you. You're going to be part of my team. I can't wait to see you playing for Ireland again. Just play some football for me, because I'm going to pick on the basis of football that I'm seeing, as opposed to, oh, you've got a great reputation and I know you're a great player and I can meld you into something. Because that, I think, is a mistake that managers make. It's like, I'm going to be the manager to unlock Hendrick or Robbie Brady.
I get that, and sometimes it's almost like you're trying to repair the damage, the confidence that has been affected. Say somebody like Jeff Hendrick, who gets criticised a lot for probably not getting on the ball enough, but you know, you look at the way the Ireland teams have played over the last couple of years, and we just haven't been able to do that. And it's not just him.
No,
it's several players. But this is a chance. So you could see the logic behind giving somebody like Hendrick a chance to say, right, it's a clean slate. Just do what you have shown you can do in the past, and you know, if you do it in this game, then you build your confidence up. And we look back in a couple of years, and you talk about how Jeff Hendrick could be doing an interview where he said, yeah, I remember Stephen Kenny gave me that chance in that Bulgaria game and I haven't looked back since. So I can understand where, yeah, some managers want to be the player that, like, you think back to when Balotelli, for example, signed for Liverpool. You're thinking, this is going to be when Liverpool strike something here, or get something out of Balotelli. It didn't work out, but constantly you see managers thinking, I can be the one that puts it right. But then, I'd like to see Connolly start. If I saw Adam Ada start, I'd be happy enough with that. And then on the right-hand side, there's a few different options. Maybe you go Callum Robinson, or, as I said, I prefer probably a left-footed player, because then we've got a right-footed player on the left-footed player on the right.
We're nearly out of time. I think Shane Long deserves a lot more respect than he gets, by the way. I think
big time, and he suits a high-energy game.
Yeah, totally. So hopefully he's going to be a key player for us over the next couple of years, while those other players who are coming through begin to mature and learn what it's like to play against men. Last thing, Shane Duffy, this move for him to Celtic, it's a great move, right? It's exactly what he needs at this stage of his career.
Yeah, it's first-team football. Well, we'd imagine it's first-team football for him, but also you can't underestimate what that's going to do for him to play for a club like Celtic when he puts on the jersey. And people will say, you know, the standard isn't as good in the Scottish Premiership as it is in the Premier League, and that may be true, but Celtic is a big club, and I'm sure as a young lad growing up, Shane Duffy probably dreamt of playing for Celtic, and you know, he's going to feel an immense amount of pride when he puts on that jersey. And it's a massive season for Celtic. He could be part of a team that wins 10 in a row, and I think I'm going to always look at his goal scoring odds in an Old Firm derby, because I think he's going to score a header in one of those derbies this season, because you know how dangerous he is from set pieces.
He's going to also be asked to play a lot of football. They will have a lot of possession.
Yeah, I mean, he's not I know Graham Potter has obviously shipped them out for the season, and you know, the general feeling is that he doesn't fit into what Graham Potter's trying to do, play out from the back. But Shane Duffy is more than capable of playing football. Graham Potter obviously doesn't fancy him. He brought in Webster, and we know Ben White, who played with Leeds last season, is a Brighton player. So yeah, it was important for Shane Duffy to get out, and I think it's good news for Irish fans and for Shane Duffy.